Drinking water is a creepy urban legend from Japan about a little girl who leaves her apartment one day and goes missing. There was a little girl who lived in an apartment building. One day, she told her mother she was going out to play with her friends. Hours later, when the girl's mother went down to call her in for dinner, she realized that her daughter was nowhere to be found. The mother asked all of the kids who lived in the apartment building if they had seen her daughter. They all told her they hadn't seen the little girl all day. The awful realization sank in. The little girl was missing. The girl's parents called the police and a search of the surrounding area was launched. All of the other parents in the apartment building joined in the search, but it was fruitless. In the end, the little girl was never found. 3 months later, the residents of the apartment complex began to complain about their drinking water supply. Whenever they turned on the water taps in their apartments, they noticed a strange odor. Gradually, the apartment manager started to receive more and more complaints from the residents about the taste and smell of their water. He decided that something had to be done and told the janitor to test the water in the storage tanks on the roof. The janitor went up on the roof and began removing the lids from the tanks and checking the chemical content of the water. When he got to the last tank, he lifted the lid and was hit with an overpowering stench. Gazing down into the murky depths, he was able to make out something floating in the water. It was the decomposing body of a child. After the police conducted an autopsy, they were able to confirm that it was the corpse of the little girl who had gone missing 3 months before. It seemed that she had been playing on the roof when the lid of the water storage tank was temporarily removed. Apparently, she looked into the tank and must have accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. The girl's corpse lay there, undisturbed, for 3 whole months. And for 3 whole months, the inhabitants of the apartment had unknowingly been drinking the water that the little girl's decomposing corpse was floating in. The Antique Doll is a scary story about a young girl who receives a strange gift on her birthday. On the morning of her birthday, Lucy's mother woke her up and told her a package had arrived in the mail and it was addressed to her. The girl hurriedly unwrapped the gift and was horrified at what she found inside. It was the most disgusting old doll she had ever seen. It was completely bald and its skin was cracked and caked in dirt. The worst thing of all was its teeth. They were long, pointy, sharp and beastly. They looked like an animal's fangs. With a shiver, she took the doll and threw it in a corner. Her mother scolded her, telling her that someone had gone to a lot of trouble to send her this antique doll. Her mother told her she had better appreciate it. Lucy tried to protest but her mother would not listen. She forced the young girl to keep the doll. So, to put her mind at rest, Lucy stuffed the antique doll into the little cupboard under the stairs, behind a pile of shoes where she wouldn't have to look at the ugly, evil little thing. It was not until a few nights later, when Lucy was lying in bed, that she heard a noise, a shuffling sound, which went on for about 5 minutes. Then, a brief dragging noise and finally, a scuttling like light footsteps walking very fast. By now Lucy was shaking in her bed with fear, unable to move. Then, she thought she heard a faint raspy voice whispering quietly from downstairs. Lucy always slept with the door open and the landing light on, as she was a little scared of the dark. She heard the voice say, "Lucy, I'm on the first step," and then loud scrabbling again as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to its place of hiding. Lucy was so scared that she didn't sleep a wink that night but laid in fear until the break of dawn. When her mother got her up for school, Lucy tried to explain to her mother what had happened the night before, but was so tired that, when her mother passed it off as just a dream, she began to believe it might be the case. Of course it wasn't. Lucy begged her parents to let her throw the antique doll in the garbage, but they insisted that it was a present and she had to keep it. So Lucy reluctantly went back to bed, telling herself that it had only been a dream. She checked the cupboard under the stairs, but the doll was exactly where Lucy had left her. That night, Lucy fought sleep, but she eventually drifted off even though she had fought sleep. Presently, the deep disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered if she could only hear it in her head. "Lucy, I'm on the 4th step," it said. Then came to scuffling noise and the voice didn't reoccur that night. Lucy was crying by now, and again she didn't sleep that night. At school, Lucy told her friends about the doll, and of course they laughed at her. Lucy could only think that if the doll was climbing 4 steps at a time, then there was only one more night to go. That night Lucy decided to shut her bedroom door. When her mother turned her light out, she asked why Lucy was no longer scared of the dark. Lucy replied that she was, and could she leave her light on instead of the hall light. But her mother pointed out that her bedroom light was so bright it would keep her awake, and said no. Therefore Lucy agreed to just sleep without a light. She opened the bedroom curtains instead to light the room a little anyway. Just as she began to doze, she heard the noise. And then the voice came, very clear this time. "Lucy, I'm on the top step." In the darkness of her bedroom, Lucy heard a click and trembled with fear. She wasn't sure, but she thought she could see her bedroom door opening very, very slowly. The next morning, Lucy's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed that she had been on her way to the toilet during the night and in the darkness, had slipped and fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. The antique doll was found beside her body, and was buried with Lucy. Everyone said what a tragedy it was. "She loved that doll," said her mother. "Now they can be together forever." Open the Door is a scary story about a girl who stays at her friend's house when her parents go on vacation. They hear noises outside the bedroom and receive a very strange warning. "I shouldn't have been there. My friend was supposed to be alone." 3 years have passed since that night, but I'll try to tell you what happened, as far as I know. Earlier that day, my friend's parents had left for a weekend vacation. She was alone in the house. I offered to come over and keep her company. I arrived around 8 p.m. and we spent the night chatting and watching TV in her bedroom. The time passed so quickly that, before we knew it, it was midnight. That's when everything got weird. We began to hear strange noises outside her bedroom. At first we thought it was just the house settling, but then we stopped talking and listened. They were soft footsteps, coming up the stairs. "Do you think your parents have come back?" I asked. She said her parents were not supposed to return until the next evening. Besides, there were too many footsteps for just 2 people. I ran over to the door and, just before the footsteps reached the hallway, I turned the key in the lock. Suddenly, there was a profound silence. "Is there anyone out there?" my friend asked nervously. We were sure there was someone outside, but who could it be? Just then, we heard a beep. We whirled around and stared at my friend's laptop. She had just received an email. She opened it. The sender was unrecognizable, just a random combination of numbers and letters. When we read the message, it sent a chill down our spines. "Whatever happens, do not open the door." As soon as I read those words, a sinking feeling came over me. My heart was beating fast and I felt like I was about to have a panic attack. I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was just someone playing a silly joke on us. Maybe it was someone trying to save our lives. Now we knew there was someone out there, behind the door. Suddenly, we heard a voice. It sounded like my friend's mother. "Please open the door. Your father and I were in a car accident, we are badly hurt. Please open the door and help us." When she heard this, my friend stared at me wide-eyed. I can still remember the expression on her face. She was in shock. Neither of us knew what to do. "Please open the door," a male voice pleaded. "We need your help." It sounded just like her father. My friend and I just stood there for a few seconds, frozen to the spot. Then she started towards the door. I grabbed her by the arm and held her back. She turned slowly to me and said, "It's my parents. They need help." I'm going to open the door. What about the email? I hissed through gritted teeth. What if it's true? What if they're not your parents? Nonsense, she said. You heard them, those were the voices of my parents. Before I could do anything, she struggled out of my grasp and walked towards the door. I still don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was sheer terror. The only thing I could think to do was run to the closet and hide. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was frightened out of my wits. What I heard then, I will never be able to forget. To this day, I have nightmares about it. My friend opened the door and all I could hear were her screams. They were blood-curdling screams, filled with pain and terror. I couldn't help her. All I could do was cower in the closet, keeping perfectly still, praying that I wouldn't be found. I don't know how long I stayed there. It could have been hours. By the time I felt safe enough to come out, it was morning. The bedroom was empty and the door was open. My friend was nowhere to be found. I ran all the way home and called her parents. When I managed to reach them, they told me they were still on vacation. I told them what happened the night before and they immediately called the police. They searched for days, but they never found my friend. I doubt they ever will. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know who or what it was that came and took my friend away. But I know they were out there. I also know that I shouldn't have been there that night. I shouldn't know that they exist. I know someday they will come for me, but whatever happens, I will not open the door. The Girl in the Mirror is a scary story about a young boy who spends his days sad and lonely until he meets a strange little girl who only appears in the mirror. When I was a child, I spent a lot of time alone. My parents lived in an old house way out in the countryside and there were no other children my age around. I had a little brother, but he was only a baby at the time, so I couldn't play with him. I was always a little lonely. The old country house where we lived had a lot of small rooms. In the corridor, there was a closet with a sliding door where my father would store his tools. I loved to go in there and play with the tools. It was fun for me at the time. One day, I found an old mirror at the back of the closet. It was an oval shape and the bronze frame was very ornate. Even though it was quite old and dusty, the glass was very clear and I could see myself perfectly. One time, when I was playing in the closet, I happened to glance at the mirror and saw something that shocked me. In the reflection, I saw a strange girl standing behind me. Frightened, I turned around quickly, but there was nobody there. When I looked back at the mirror, I was confused. The little girl was still there. I guess because I was a child, I wasn't scared of her. I just thought it was strange that she only appeared in the mirror. The little girl had long, dark hair and pale, white skin. Through the mirror, she looked at me and laughed. "Hello," she said with a smile. We started talking to each other. The girl told me to call her Nana. We would talk all the time. My parents must have wondered why I spent so much time in the closet talking to myself, but they never took the mirror away from me. It seemed that Nana-chan was not visible to adults. One day, when I was talking to Nana-chan, I said, "I'm lonely. I wish I had some friends I could play with. Come over here and play with me," Nana-chan replied. "I can go over there." I asked, "How do I do that?" Nana's face became troubled, then she lowered her voice. "I don't know," she whispered. "I'll ask." I wondered who she was going to ask, but all I could hear was silence. Somehow I felt like whoever it was, they didn't want me to listen. The next day, when I spoke to Nana, she said happily, "I know how you can come over here now. Come on, let's play." I was happy, but I remembered that my parents had always warned me that I had to tell them before I went anywhere. "Okay, but I'll have to ask my mother," I replied. Nana's face became a little troubled again and she said, "Don't tell anyone about this. We may not be able to meet each other if you tell someone." I stayed silent because I didn't want to disobey my parents. Then Nana-chan said, "So you'll come and play with me tomorrow, okay?" Promise. Yeah, I replied, reluctantly. I promise. Nana reached out and touched the surface of the mirror with her little finger. Pinky swear? She asked with a smile. I reached out and pressed the tip of my little finger to the mirror beside hers. Pinky swear, I said. I thought I could feel a slight warmth through the glass. That night, I didn't sleep very much. I didn't tell my parents about Nana-chan, but as I lay there in the darkness, questions were swirling around in my head. How would I enter into the mirror? What kind of place was it over there? Why wouldn't Nana come over here? If I went over there, how would I come back over here? As I contemplated such things, I grew more and more anxious. I became a little scared of Nana-chan. The next day, I didn't go to see Nana. I avoided her the day after that and the day after that. I didn't go near the closet all week. In fact, I never went into the closet again. The weeks and months passed by quickly and I grew older. The months and years passed and I grew up. I left home to go to high school in the town. After I graduated, I started working in a nearby town. I didn't go home very much. Eventually, I met a girl and we got married. My wife found out she was pregnant. She went to visit her parents for a while. I was all alone in the house, so I sometimes visited my own parents for dinner. They still lived in the same house. One night, I decided to stay over and slept in my old bedroom. In the middle of the night, I woke up and went to use the toilet. While I was washing my hands, I happened to glance in the mirror. A sliding door in the middle of the corridor was open. It was the closet where I had played as a child. I thought the door had been closed when I went to the toilet. I turned around and was shocked to see that the door was closed after all. However, when I looked back at the mirror, the door was open. A chill went down my spine and my hands began to shake. I thought I saw the door sliding back slightly in the darkness. At that moment, I remembered Nana-chan. I was overcome by fear, but it impossible to tear my eyes away from the mirror. The door was moving after all, in the mirror's reflection. A white mist was floating across the darkness at the back of the closet. As I stared, it formed into a familiar face. The smiling face of Nana-chan. I think I must have fainted. The next thing I remember was waking up on the floor. It was morning and my parents were still in bed. It must have been a dream, I told myself. Just a creepy dream. I wasn't comfortable staying in my parents' house, so after breakfast, I went back to my own home. My apartment has an underground parking lot, so I pulled into my reserved space and parked the car. Just as I was about to get out, I glanced in the rearview mirror and did a double take. There, in the mirror, was the face of Nana. I looked back in surprise, but there was no one in the back seat. I looked back at the rearview mirror and Nana-chan was still there. She was staring at me over my shoulder and our eyes met. She looked exactly the same. The long, dark hair, the pale white skin. In all the time, nothing had changed. I was trembling and I couldn't take my eyes off her. Eventually, Nana laughed. "Hello," she said with a smile. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Why didn't you come back that time?" she asked. "All this time, I've been waiting for you." I was silent. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't find the words. "Hey," she said. "Come over here and let's play from now on." In the reflection, her hand slowly stretched out towards me. "Let's play here forever," she said. "It's no good," I screamed. I didn't mean to say it so loud. "Nana-chan, I'm sorry, I can't go over there." "I won't go." Nana was silent and her hand stopped in midair. Trembling, I grasped the door handle with all my strength and spoke in a small voice, like the little boy I had been long ago. "I have a wife now, we're having a baby soon. So, I can't." I ended up at a loss for words with my head in my hands. I was shaking and shivering uncontrollably and eventually, I looked up at the mirror. Nana-chan was still there. "I see," she said, "you became an adult, and you don't want to play with me anymore." Her voice sounded so sad and lonely. I can't, I said. Nana Chan laughed and smiled. It seemed like such an innocent smile. At that moment, I really thought Nana Chan would forgive me for breaking our promise. Nana Chan, I began, but she cut me off. If you won't play with me, I'll just have to find someone else, she said. Someone just like you. And then, suddenly, she was gone. Before I could fully understand her last words, she was gone. Once and for all. Nana never appeared to me again. That evening my wife called me to tell me she had suffered a miscarriage. Our baby was dead. Then, I finally understood what Nana Chan meant when she said, someone just like you.